1 minute.
Well, warm greetings to everyone and God bless you all. Today, we're going to be looking at the issues of military coups, causes and effects of military coups, and what makes it possible to have a military coup. I think it was General Babangida that was saying the other day that the military watches the tone of the nation before they decide to strike and have a coup. And if certain things are not in place in a nation, then it's easier to have a coup. But we'll be looking at the coup, especially with what happened in the Niger. And also, since we have a very great person as our guest, General Ishola Williams, he'll be giving us a big background to himself, his thoughts and thinking on Nigeria, the history of Nigeria, and the development of Nigeria, and what the future holds, not just for Nigeria, but for Africa. I'll be inviting Pastor Sonny to direct the affairs of this particular session, and I wish everyone very, very well. General Williams, you are most welcome, sir, and it's good to see you. You're looking well. Nigeria must be treating you very, very well. So we'd just like you to give us a little bit of introduction to yourself, your background, what you did in the military, your thoughts and your thinking about Nigeria and the issues that has gone on in the Republic of Niger. God bless you, sir. You are most welcome to the African Leadership Group, the Nigerian Leadership Series. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Thank you. It's very interesting that a group of people have got together to come up and discuss this topic, which is very timely, really, and especially when Nigeria, the leader of ECOWAS, is supposed to be taking the lead. And this is an opportunity for civil society organizations and individuals to be able to contribute. I have sent some few words to Madame Jumoke about who I am, and I don't think I want to say more than that. Okay.
Please go ahead, sir. What's your thinking about Nigeria, the state of affairs in Nigeria, a little bit about the effect of coups in Nigeria, and what's your thoughts about this recent coup in Niger and what it portends for Africa and the African continent? And Sonny, you can take over from here, please.
When we talk about coups in Africa, especially in West Africa, we are going back to the 1960s. And for example, the case of Nigeria, 1966. Since that time, many coups have happened. Everybody at that time was worried, and various programs were set in motion with the military in mind to prevent further coups. And if all of us can remember, in the 90s, all these coups stopped. So we had a respite. When you then talk about Niger, Niger is one of the countries that have been having a series of coups. And I have an experience with Niger. When in 2010, we had to go there, 2009 and 2010, to go there because the military head of state at that time, even though he was elected, Colonel Tanja, wanted to extend his stay in power after 2 terms. And he got a group of people, as usual, to change the constitution. And that led to a lot of, brouhaha in Niger, and they had to call in ECOWAS to find a way to help solve the problem between the opposition parties and the colonel then, who was the president. Interestingly, the president, Bazoum, was the leader of the opposition party at that time, because the real leader, who later became the president, Issoufou, was on exile. So he took over from Issoufou and became the leader of the opposition. They negotiated the transition to power. Now, that transition came to an end in 2010. And when you guys climb in that place, you can follow. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you,
We
sir.
can hear you. Please go ahead, sir.
Oh, okay, yes. So that transition came ended when there was a coup d'etat in 2009. ECOWAS sent General Baka there, and General Baka managed to convince the military boss at that time to set a 1-year transition program. And by 2011, they had elections and then handed over power to the civilian government. That was the one that brought in the immediate past president, President Issoufou, okay, and made Bazoum, who did a good job really during the negotiation, to be the foreign minister, and later the Minister of Interior. Now, Bazoum was chosen by Issoufou to replace him. Some people can remember that after the election last year, and Bazoum was to be sworn in as the president, the military attempted a coup d'etat to stop the inauguration. People did not take notice of that at all. It was Issoufou himself who managed to convene the military and said, "Oh, let this guy take over." But the military was saying that the election was rigged and so on. But they managed to resolve that, and this Bazoum became president. Okay, Bazoum became president. Since that time, the relationship between the military and Bazoum has not been very smooth. Not been very smooth at all. Now, what Bazoum thought was that he should not bother his head very much about the military. Once he has support from another states, like, they have a base there with about 1,000 soldiers, and from France, which also has a base and has been there for some time now, and increase the number of personnel in that base when they were sent out of Mali with about 1,500 people. And those bases are very, very important in the war against the jihadists. Very, very, very important. Okay. And since Mali told everybody to back up and started to bring in the Russians, everybody moved to Niger. And a lot of millions of dollars and euros has been spent by European Union, France in particular, Germany and so on, and in other states, of course, having a drone base in that place. So, Bazoum was very comfortable.
I'm going to mute everyone.
General,
and
please
ask
hold
you
on.
to unmute again.
Can you please mute everyone?
Yes. Sir, can you please unmute yourself, please? Sir, please go ahead and unmute yourself. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay, so it was very comfortable, believing that, Even though the military did not like him, there was nothing they could do. France and United States could save him. But he forgot that France has already made up his mind that if there are going to be any coup in any part of Africa, in the past 20 years, they were not going to intervene, except they were called in to intervene. Now, that is very, very important. Why? Because France was urging our president to intervene. And if you look at it properly, you will see that France wants to use Nigeria as a proxy to be able to force the military boys to bring back the civilian president. Fortunately for us now, our president has backed down and is not talking about diplomacy, especially since XM of Kanu, Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, went on quiet diplomacy, which ought to have been the first step. Instead of all the noise, you don't negotiate by threatening people. You don't. And that was what was done. Okay, so at the end of the day, Sanusi has come back. From what I've heard from Abuja, our president has toned down his voice with respect to force and is now open to diplomacy. And I think Sanusi, Lamido Sanusi, has opened the door now for quiet diplomacy. Let me also say too that we Africans need to think seriously. And what do we need to think about? If we have France and United States in Niger, what it shows is that we are dependent on outsiders to help us fight the jihadists. And it appears that without them, because even Mali that sent out France and every other person, Mali has to go to Russia, and Russia sent in Wagner. Something's wrong with us, sincerely. And we need to sit down really and find out a way. The second thing I want to say is this. ECOWAS is always using the same playbook. What do I mean by playbook? Whenever there's a coup, they rush a group of people there to come and talk to the military boys. They will apply sanctions. They will do this, they will do that. The same playbook. The Nigerian officers have understood that. And they knew what ECOWAS was going to do. So they were ready. Okay, they were ready. But because ECOWAS does not seem to have learned from the lessons from Mali, Burkina Faso, and Guinea, because if they have learned their lessons, they're going to approach the Nigerian situation with the way they did. They would have approached it that way at all. Again, when the boys were taking over, especially the Presidential Guard Commander, who was appointed by the immediate past president, when they said they were taking over, the man who appointed him, the former president, wanted to talk to the general. General listened to him, but he said he was not backing down. But ECOWAS never bothered to contact President Yusufu to ask him and say, what's happening over there? What's happening over there? They just threatened and say, oh, we are going to use force if we don't change within 1 week and so on. Secondly, there are some diplomatic efforts you make. You don't publicize it. Nobody knew that Sanusi was going to Niger. He went and succeeded where the United States, ECOWAS, and other people did not succeed. He saw the military head of state. He saw that. So it is always very important that you don't apply the same playbook to every situation. Give yourself some time to say, is this situation the same with the last one? If it is not, what can be done? Now, let me quickly move to what effect will it have. Now, coups are well known in Africa, and especially in West Africa now. We are used to it. We have 4 already, and everybody's going about their business. We are so much concerned because the Western countries are very much concerned about what they call democracy. That's so much concern. But the point is that there's a question mark here. And the question mark is that if democracy is so good, why is it that the military is always taking over? It's so good. Are we really applying it well? Because if you look at the governance system, we copied either the United States or France. And what you discover is that African presidents are semi-gods. I'm telling you, they're so powerful. African presidents are semi-gods. And in no way are they modest about their powers. And in a multi-ethnic group, we need to start looking at other models of governance in Africa. Because to a certain extent, too, what has happened in the case of Niger, too, is also true. To a certain extent, the ethnic group that Bazoum belongs to, which is a minority group altogether. And the ministry believes that the minority belongs to are part of the jihadist movement and the rebel movement. And therefore, it's not allowing them to deal with the jihadists and the eco-violence that is going on in the Sahel. But frankly, there's nothing that the military boss can do to be able to change the situation, because they haven't got the capability, they have not also got the capacity. So if our day the best thing for them is to beg France and other states and say, don't interfere, but help us with what we are doing with fighting the jihadists. If not, the jihadists should take over. It's taking Nigeria 10 years to be able to eliminate Boko Haram and ISWAP. 10 years, more than 10 years right now. And we don't know when it's going to end. We don't know. Okay. And we have a multinational force with Chad, Niger, and Cameroon. Okay, so to me, we need to sit down within ourselves as Africans and find out the so-called African solution to African problems. But we lack strategic thinkers in Africa. Very much so, we lack strategic thinkers. And at the rate we are going, I can't see any change. Now, finally, let me say something now. When you look at Asia, for example, Asia hasn't got Asian Union like the African Union. They haven't got anything like that, but they have regional groups. Now, there are coups in Asia, but not many. The case of Myanmar comes to mind. In Thailand, the military is in charge of governance. And you cannot become a prime minister without the military. In Pakistan, they've just jailed the former prime minister and banned him from public office. So in some countries, the military are so powerful in Asia. Okay. And the Western countries have accepted that. They've accepted that. It's only the case of Africa that they continue to push and push and push and push for this democracy. We Africans on our own side too, we have not sincerely looked at what is all these things about democracy. And is there any way we can sincerely look at the way we apply democracy here, especially elections? Especially elections, because the Niger people too said the election was rigged. That the election was rigged. Therefore, we need to look at, people have come up with various systems, rank voting system and so on. we they use in New York, for example, and some parts of United States. Okay. That eliminates some sort of political party system with the rank voting. Okay. So these are some of the issues that I want to raise. Let me stop here so that people who want to contribute or who know more than I know can also say what they know that can learn from too, or all of us can learn from too. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, General. Thanks once again for that very insightful comment. My name is Sonny. I'm a co-host also with Pastor Itwa. It's interesting listening to you. I want to find out from you, as a man that we learned walked out of the army because of a military coup that was staged in Nigeria, that would presuppose that you don't think that the military should be in government. But listening to you now, and correct me if I'm wrong, you will seem to be suggesting that democracy is not entirely working for us in Africa. And so the Asian model should be looked at maybe, or, the Arab models, because you spoke about China, Pakistan, and some of those places. Are you suggesting that we should have a blend of something like that, given that you yourself were so obtuse about democracy in the early days?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Did you hear me, sir?
Okay. Now, some of us who are old enough will remember our first president, although ceremonial, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe.
Yes.
He said one thing when the coup happened in 1966. He said the future of governance in Africa for some time to come is diarchy. Does any person remember that? Diarchy.
I can't remember that, but go ahead.
He used the word diarchy. In fact, that's the first time I've heard that in my life, but that's over 50 years ago now. Okay?
Yeah.
But people forgot about that because in the real sense of it, there's nothing like a military government. None. It's impossible. You must always have civilians serving with the military boys. Like the case of Niger now, they've appointed a prime minister, a civilian. They've appointed a cabinet of 21 people. Only 6 of them are military officers. Only 6. The rest 15 are civilians with 4 women. Okay, so there's nothing really like that. And again, people tend to forget one thing also. The civil service or the civil servant, they are the engine of governance. If they want to sabotage the government, they can do it easily. In fact, the civil servants run government. Civil servants run government. So it's not a matter of blending, it's a matter of diarchy. Now, what really happens in human existence is this, is that after some time, we will get to a stage in which we will be like United States or France or UK or anything like that. And the military will not even think about coup d'etat. When Trump was fooling around the United States and asked the military government to take over, the military to take over after the election of Biden, the chairman of Joint Chief of Staff just said no. Just said no. And it has happened in Nigeria too, during the time of President Azikiwe, after the first elections in Nigeria, in which he called the commander of the army and said the election was rigged, we should take over.
Okay. All right. So to be clear, you don't mind a diarchy for us in Africa?
Yes.
All
Because
right.
after some time, the whole thing will normalize itself.
Yeah, but we've been on this journey from the 60s when we had incessant military coups in most of Africa. And we thought that we have ridden that wave, and now we are in a flowing democracy. Do you think the alternative to continuous bad government and perpetuation of those in leadership, whether in one political party or the other, is the intervention of the military? Is there no other way we can do this other than having military intervention?
Okay, that's very interesting. You know, when the military takes over, you know, one thing they always talk about, corruption.
Yeah.
They
Yes.
talk about corruption.
Yes.
They too, they get there, they become crooks.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But when you look at the presidential system of government,
yes,
and the parliamentary system of government, in the parliamentary system, in the presidential system of government, the president, like I said, is semi-god. Because when you look at many African countries, or even our own Nigeria, the president is supposed to be, you know, checked by the judiciary and the National Assembly. But we know, like Miller said, when he was the Speaker of the House, he said they didn't elect me to come and oppose Buhari. He was told you, we are not telling you to oppose him, but you are just to go, you just not pass any bill at all that he brings without questioning. Or if he's doing something that needed to be changed, then we needed to do it. Okay, so and in a country where there are you need a parliamentary system of government. Let me tell you why. In terms of accountability, there are 3 levels of accountability in the parliamentary system. Number 1, you have your constituency. It's your constituency that chooses you within the political party. So in a parliamentary system, the political party is very strong. Okay. Secondly, when you are elected and you go to the parliament, you're also accountable as a member of the parliament. Okay. Now, if you become the prime minister, you are accountable to the parliament, in which you have to go to the parliament every 2 weeks or every month to go and give account of your stewardship. And if they know that you are messing around, they will tell you to leave. In the presidential system, they are even afraid to call a president will stay in Nigeria for 8 years without giving account to the nation. It's only recently they put in a constitution what they call, you know, presidential speech or something like that, once a year, that you come and give account of yours. No, that sort of system is not suitable for our country. And what we also forget is this, that our challenge in Africa is followership. It is followership, it's not leadership. Leaders don't drop from heaven. Leaders come from followers who are chosen by followers to lead them. Okay? And there's no leader without a follower. So if followers don't like you, they kick you out. But our followership system in Africa is so weak. It's so weak. And now it has been taken over by money. But in the parliamentary system, at least to a certain extent, it is checked. It is checked. And that's the sort of thing that I see, that I believe that is good for Africa, where they have a parliamentary system of government. Not the one that they have a president, and the president is powerful, and he chooses the prime minister. No. No. So we need to do some serious thinking in Africa about our governance system. And like I was saying, even about voting, there's a new system of voting they call rank voting, in which at the end of the day, the person that's elected is not elected on political party basis. It is because that person has the character that the voters like. That's why they voted him in. Because at the level of the rank voting, they've forgotten about the political parties.
No.
They've forgotten. And when you look at presidential system too, the president is also the leader of the party. So who can talk to him? Who can talk to him? So That is why the military becomes the opposition party in African countries. They become the opposition party.
Okay. All right. So explain that ranked voting again. How does the ranked voting work? We'll come to you, those that want to ask questions or those that want to contribute. You spoke about ranked voting. How does that work?
Okay, very good question. The rank voting, what it does is this: is that after you've gone through the primary in your party, okay, in a country where they allow independent candidates, they will pool all the independent candidates and the political parties together and tell people, forget about the political party they belong to. Look at the individual, okay? And if you think it's good enough, vote for him. So people will vote for all the candidates. The first two candidates will now go for the election.
Okay. All right. All right.
The first two candidates will now go for the election, irrespective of any party they belong to. So
Okay.
you then find a situation in which money bars cannot dominate anything.
All right. Okay, thank you very much, sir. Let's just drill down on the Niger coup a bit. And I know you've given a bit of history and background and the ethnic group that Bazoum belongs to, and even President Yusufu before him. The issue is the coup has happened now. And we know that the EU went, they were rebuffed. A few emissaries went from Nigeria, they were rebuffed. Even the Americans went, the EU, but eventually Sanusi was able to get audience with the coup leader, General Tiani. What did you think that achieved? When he came back, he went to the villa, he briefed the president, and today we hear that the president is talking about a more diplomatic option, a more diplomatic way of resolving the issue. Where do we go from here? A coup is on ground. Do we give them time? Do we extend it? Do they put more sanctions on the country? Where do we go from here?
Good question, sir. Now, I want to take you again
Yes,
to
sir.
the past.
Yes, sir.
In 2020,
Yes, sir.
when Jonathan went to Mali, the Malians were behaving exactly like this Nigeria when he went there. So ECOWAS applied sanction. So the Malian boys, military boys said, Mr. President, we will not talk to you except they lift sanctions.
Yeah.
So ECOWAS now told the Malian boys, appoint a prime minister and set up a cabinet. So Mali appointed a civilian president and set up a cabinet of ministers, just like Niger has done now. I know what ECOWAS did. ECOWAS lifted the sanction. ECOWAS lifted the sanction over Mali. In the case of Burkina Faso, when the young captain, they moved the senior from the presidency, ECOWAS went there and spoke to the young captain. And the young captain told them that there's no going back. But ECOWAS can be assured that you work out a transition program. Nobody knows the transition program up to today. ECOWAS has not said anything. Okay. In the case of Guinea, Guinea told the president of ECOWAS then, Embalo of Guinea-Bissau, who is also a retired general, but now president of Guinea-Bissau, they told him not to come back there again. I'm telling you, that's what they told him. They abused him. In Guinea, nobody has been able to do anything about Guinea. Nobody. Therefore, all these examples that I've given now,
Yes.
what Niger has done now is what Mali has done to get sanctions removed. Set up a cabinet and a civilian prime minister, Dayaki. And
So
like you
what's
said
the,
correctly,
yes, sir.
give them some time. Give
But
them
sir,
some time.
if we continue in that trajectory, what's the wider implication for the West African country and by extension other African countries? What stops this from happening in Benin, in Ghana, in Sierra Leone, in Gambia, in Nigeria, and everybody buys the time. And then we'll be back to the 60s where Coup was the order of the day.
As far as I see it, the Ghana armed forces will not do a coup. They won't.
No, so I'm just giving an example that if what you are suggesting is that people can just do a coup and get away with it. Yeah, Mali has done it, Guinea did it, the Burkina Faso did it, and in the last 4 years, there have been 7 coups in the region. 3 succeeded and they are right now in power. Another 4 probably did not succeed very well. The issue is what can the ECOWAS heads of state really do? What can we do? And I understand that you have said a diarchy may be the way to go and that the antidote to coup is good governance. And we are not having that currently in Africa. So are we saying that the option to bad government really is military intervention?
Do we have an alternative?
Yeah, the balance.
Because if you look at the opposition parties in Africa, they are not strong at all. They are not. They are not strong at all. And because we follow the presidential system, political parties are weak in presidential system. But in parliamentary system, political parties are very strong. Because in a parliamentary system, the opposition party is the party in waiting for power. Party in waiting. In parliamentary system, in presidential system, there's no party waiting for power. Secondly, too, in presidential system, it is too personified. It is too personified, but not in parliamentary system. So what I'm trying to say is that if you want to prevent many coups in Africa, we need to look at this semi-godlike presidential system that you have, a system of accountability that you have, and how we can develop opposition parties in Africa, which presently we do not have.
Okay. I'm not sure everybody on the platform will agree with you, but I would like to open it up a bit. I still have more questions so that we can interact because it's your perspective is very interesting and we would like to look at it. We in the African Leadership Group, what we are trying to push was really to get citizens' engagement in holding leadership accountable. And we are proposing to do this by several factors and ways. Because I think the real challenge, and you mentioned it, was that we have very weak followership who do not challenge leadership, who do not hold leadership accountable. For instance, the Senate president said on live television, while Nigerians are crying under the weight of a policy that their government have pushed down our throats, that fellow senators, the clerk has sent something to you to go and enjoy your recess. They are going for more than a month recess, no work, they're going to collect pay, and on top of that, they've sent something to them. Now, we the citizens, how should we ordinarily react to such a thing? Should we demand full accountability, full disclosure of what was sent? Can we see the account of these honorable senators? So what we're trying to do is an empowered citizenship and empowered followers that can demand, and if it doesn't happen, we'll take it to the next level. But, so that is what we're trying to do with this group that we have. But it's interesting that you have said that, look, the only people that can probably hold this strong dictatorial kind of presidents to account in Nigeria will be the military. Situation in point is the military comes in, and then the military and the civilians become paddies in hands, and they begin to oppress. Because in reality, most of the people that have entered politics retired from military and they went into politics. They were no different. So the issue with that, like I think, and you may respond to it if you like, is that a diarchy will still produce the same result we are having now. But if we have an empowered citizenship, and empowered citizens that can demand accountability, know their rights, stand on it, and do not budge until the right thing is done, then we'll probably be able to begin to make progress with democracy. I don't know what you think about that, sir, before I open the floor up for questions.
You see, what I can say is this, is that for the past 1.5 years,
Yes, sir.
I've been looking for any institution at all, whether it's church or university or anything like that,
Yes, sir.
to set up a lab for followership and how followership can be empowered.
Yes.
If you send me your email,
Yes, sir.
I will send you the concept paper.
Great.
Sonny, I have a question to ask our general.
Okay,
Just
go ahead,
one
sir.
question.
Yes, sir.
General, sir, you were part of the military. There was a coup, there was not a coup. Can you take us back as to what the situation was then and why you actually then left the military? And what do you think we can do in Nigeria to have good governance? And then Sonny, please take over from there. So I just want you to give us that throwback, sir. What happened at that time? Why did you leave the military? And going forward with Nigeria, what do we need to do to ensure we have good governance? Thank you.
No. But see, there's something we need to understand about a regional organization is as powerful as its members. Any regional organization is as powerful as its members. Here we have ECOWAS, and ECOWAS, there are some member countries of ECOWAS who do not even pay for the past 10 years, who have not paid their contribution for the past 10 years. Nigeria has been paying. And not only that, ECOWAS is not yet what I will call a confederation in which states have given up most of their sovereignty. But ECOWAS is moving towards that, like in the case of Switzerland, for example, in the case of Switzerland. But what you do find also is this, is that most institutions in Africa, in fact, including our own civil servants in Nigeria, they don't like anybody to come up with ideas from outside. They don't. Very rarely. But they will like the Western countries or even Russia or anybody to come up with the ideas, especially if they are going to back those ideas with money. And therefore, unlike European Union, where they even fund NGOs to produce ideas, to produce innovations and things like that, that does not happen in Africa. Because those organizations too are dependent on getting something for Africa. To a certain extent now, ECOWAS is getting 75% of its funding to run ECOWAS, not for projects, from member countries. And Nigeria, as you know, is paying about 60% of that amount of money. Okay. Having said that, I think Pastor Ito has said what is necessary for us to do. Empowerment of the citizen all over Africa will change Africa completely. Africa's problem is not leadership. Africa's problem is followership. We've got to accept that. It's not leadership. Secondly, too, we push too much on human rights, but we forget that human rights and human responsibilities are two sides of the same coin. You cannot ask for rights if you are irresponsible. You cannot. But because the Western countries come and say, human rights, what about your responsibility as a citizen, as a person? That's part of the empowerment. That's what it's all about.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. There are some different thoughts, and it's good to engage with you. You're a man that has been on both sides of the divide, and you obviously have your sovereign. So if you want to ask a question, some people's hands were up X while, but it's down now. So the way we do it, we open it up for some comments and questions. I will take Remy, Shobotu, and Itemitare and Frederick, those three in that order. So Remy, if you can unmute yourself, please go straight to the point, and if it's a question, ask. If it's a comment, make.
Yes, I'll do that. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yes, good evening, everyone. When we look at the nature of the problems that come up with governance in Africa,
Yes.
Africans are not operating in isolation of the rest of the world. And so I believe that African nations are actually playing in a very intricate web that has been woven by the West in particular, so that they have their hands on resources at lower than market rates perennially. And because of this, they've built their structures so that they manage the problems that arise from the leadership in Africa, whether it's good leadership or bad leadership, to a point where they benefit from such things as coups, from such things as corrupt leadership, and so on and so forth. Now, for Nigeria, I believe personally that we've come a long way. And because we've come a long way, we are able to influence, to an extent, the West African nations. Let's even start from West Africa. And I believe that certain institutions in Nigeria should be allowed to feed the leadership with, as the general earlier mentioned on, the production of ideas that would help leadership take decisions that would not put organizations such as ECOWAS in jeopardy. Because the West ideally wants to see such organizations fail. Now, I don't know what the status of play is with organizations in the past that had responsibilities for the production of ideas. The National Institute of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. We don't know what's going on with that. Hello? Hello? Okay.
Yes.
In the past, there were also several think tanks that had the responsibility of just, looking at scenarios emerge in the subcontinent. And I know that if we were a little more efficient at playing this game, not only being overt in our production of ideas, but also being covert through our embassies in these nations, through business contacts, through former leadership contacts, and so on and so forth, the present leadership would have had a slew of ideas or options at play before they had approached the ECOWAS with this option of a military intervention. It wouldn't be the first thing, as the general had said, thrown on the table.
Yeah.
So we do need some kind of structure, intelligent structure, that allows the presidency drill down into these minds that are supposed to be fully engaged in looking at the scenarios, preempting the actions of the West, even before, months before they actually take a step in action, so that we are able to identify to ourselves what our response will be. It just shows how cold we were left out in the cold, in this Niger coup. And the Nigerians are our brothers, really. We've had centuries of interaction with them. So there's no reason why we would not have some kind of channels of communication that tell us this is about to happen. What is Nigeria's position, so that we are able to determine what our position is, regardless of what the West wants to do, and that we come out ahead and we're not at loggerheads or are able to prevent things happening, in the states that are around us, the contiguous states around us. Regarding fellowship, there's another organization called the National Orientation Organization, or whatever it is. These organizations collect billions in budget allocations every year. Well, the output is zero. So I'd like to know from the general, he seems to have a much broader perspective as to how all these things play, so that we are able to be in a position where we are a step ahead, if possible, or in step with the West, regarding what their own selfish motives are for having coups where they want to have coups, and so on and so forth in West Africa and beyond on the African continent. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. General, I hope you noted that. We'll just take two more comments.
Okay.
One from Eitemi, and then the other from Frederick. Then I will come back to the other people. Please, let's be brief so that more people can have opportunity to throw in their questions.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, General, sir. My question is directed at you, sir, General. And I'm asking, what are your thoughts about the risk of having a president who, at least in this instance that we have seen, he appears to be acting like a foreign asset or proxy, to the extent that he rushed to want to use ECOWAS to declare war on Niger, basically against any conceivable interest of Nigeria or the Nigerian people, and for the interest of a foreign power. So I'd like to know what your thoughts are on that, sir.
Okay, thank you for that question. The General will answer. Frederick, unmute yourself, yeah. Frederick.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, sirs. I'll go straight to the question.
Yes.
What is happening in Nigeria today is 50 times worse than what is happening in the Niger Republic. The general said that the problem is with the followers. To some extent, I agree. But the issue is that when the followers protest against bad governance, unarmed citizens are shot to death, not injured, shot to death, and in some cases given mass burials. Then the same government will tell you, if you want a change of government, do it legitimately through the ballot box. We go for elections, they rig elections, impose themselves into office, and they tell you, go to court. You go to court, they try to manipulate the judiciary. Then when you plan coup, they tell you, oh, coup is not good. In a situation like this, what should the followers do? That's question number one. Secondly, and finally, sir, I don't know the role of the African unity, the African Union in Nigeria, in the Africa of today. We have at least 13 foreign countries having military bases in Africa. US alone has 750 military bases across 18 nations. Now, these military bases in Africa, they exploit the minerals. They steal, I like to use direct word, they steal the minerals of the people. They sponsor coup. And I know by perception that the rebel anti-coup group that just came out of Niger Republic now is being sponsored by these so-called foreign powers. There is no, I don't know of any African country that has military bases in US, China, and those countries. What is it that the African Union is seeing when they accept these foreign troops to have bases in their countries? Is it not selling our sovereignties? That is just the question, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Just to give the general, so that the questions don't become too much. General, I'll allow you to take these first three, and then we'll go on to the rest. So if you raise your hand, just keep it up, because if it goes down, then you will not be on the chat to be asked. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Now, so the comment from the first gentleman, I've been I've been running an NGO now for the past 25 years, since I left the military. That's what I've been doing all my life. And I can tell you, sir, I've approached many ministries, many institutions under the government, trying to push ideas and things like that. What they are concerned about is money, not ideas. They want you to bring the ideas and to bring the money. Whereas they have budgets. And what did they do with the budget? The budget disappeared. Okay. Let me just give you a simple example. Sheikh Gumi says that the Fulanis are doing what they are doing because nobody's looking after their health, education, and so on. I've asked Sheikh Gumi so many times, and those I come across in government, including the Sultan of Sokoto, what is the job of the Nomadic Commission? The budget they get every year, what do they use the money for? The Nomadic Commission, because I came across them in the 90s after I retired from the army in Alkali village in Yobe on the border with Niger, the Niger Republic, where they were attending to nomadic Fulani children. They moved with them as teachers, health workers, and so on. Why did they stop? Nobody has been able to answer that question. Up to today, nobody. Now, you could see that the whole issue about Fulani something has died down since Buhari left. That's how Nigeria works. So, you see? So, even if you have a wonderful idea, the civil servants are not ready to listen to you, except you are ready to share the money with them, or that's if they even bring out the money. Or, and even if you get money from somewhere. The second thing I want to say is also do that. ISS, DSS, they have an Institute for Security Studies. They have one. Every one of security agencies, they have a research unit, research institute. I've been asking them, what do you do? When you go to them and say, let us do a conference, or let us do a brainstorming session by Zoom. I remember I went to one, and I told them that I will set up the Zoom platform, just like this one. Let us do some brainstorming. Oh, they said, no, we want a physical meeting, go and bring the budget. And I said, I'm not going to bring the budget. Then they said, it will not happen. They said, it will not happen. And that's it. And there are no independent think tanks in Nigeria because most Nigerians who have some money, they don't want to do that. So that's the point about ideas coming into government and things like that. And the last point I want to make on that is that if you look at the Western world, people move around from academic to government to think tanks. They rotate like that. So you work in a think tank, you're invited to work in government, and then you end up later in the academia to share your knowledge about what you have seen in government. It doesn't happen in Nigeria. So that's what, to Madam, Madam, let us accept one thing. African presidents don't want to look good in their own country. They don't care. As long as they look good with Western world, they're happy. So if there's anything to do, they needed to do for the Western world to say, yes, these are good men, they're very happy. Whatever you think about them internally, it's not their business. Because most African presidents lack what I would call legitimacy. They're elected legally. But like the last I said, the legitimacy is not there. Legitimacy is not there. So whether proxy or no proxy, as long as they look good. And that's why France jumped up and said, oh, Nigeria, go in, we will support you. Go in, support you. They're not talking about Boko Haram. They're not talking about Boko Haram at all, or what's happening in the Sahel. And also, too, the former group in Niger has come up and said they are ready to fight the military regime, that they're ready to fight. So if France is looking for people to support, they say France should support them to be able to overthrow the military. Who's going to die? The Nigerians. So that's the unfortunate thing. But rarely do that sort of thing happen in Asia. This is what I was saying. Rarely it happens in Asia. Now, about the other question. Let me just say that the empowerment of citizens and so on and so forth start with citizens accepting responsibility. Okay, accepting responsibility. And when they go out to accept responsibility, it means that they will not be dissuaded by money. The answers that happened in Lagos, from what I saw in Lagos, they interviewed some few boys on television. The boy said that he goes there because he gets three meals a day. That's what he said. Get 3 meals a day. And of course, people were getting money from abroad to be able to keep the protest going. All right. So it wasn't a spontaneous, voluntary something. It was not at all. That was why the whole thing collapsed. And that was why the government could get away with whatever, you see, they were trying to, they did with that answer. Until today, nobody knows the whole story. Because Lagos state government has refused to release the report of the board of inquiry that was set up. And the lady justice who did it was very bold. And I'm sure in the report, she said so many things that the government will not allow us to see. So what at the end of the day? So really, where we need to start from is this. In the 1960s, in the 50s and 60s, members of a political party used to contribute money to political parties. And therefore, not a single person can dominate the party. Today, members look for what they can get from the party, not what they can contribute to the party. And if you have a situation like that, of course, when PDP, the money that presidential candidate was depositing to be able to contest in millions of naira, they were sharing it. They are giving themselves millions. As members of the executive committee of PDP, we don't know what happened in the case of APC. So, followership is still very important. We can't run away from it. Because once followership are empowered, the people who become leaders come from that empowered followership. Okay? And they know that from where they are coming from, accountability will be demanded from them. That is what is happening in the United States with Trump. That's what's happening in the United States with Trump. Okay? You've got to be accountable. You've got to be accountable. Citizens will demand for it. You've got to be accountable. And that's what we lack in Nigeria. Finally, about all these institutions that we have set up in Nigeria, I am telling you, 90% of the DGs are just there to look for money and make money. And because Nigeria is one country that has greatest intolerance for impunity. Greatest intolerance for impunity. I'm just I've set up a framework in which, but after I can start doing something we call impunity index. Again, we've got a concept paper on that. the Triple-Eight Index. And I was talking to Center for Democracy and Development. If they can help us with some money to be able to start setting up that index, then Nigerians will see that we are one of the greatest countries with great tolerance for impunity. And in any country where you have impunity, I'm telling you, there's no way you can have men and women of character. Where in the world would you have a president who has no classmates in primary and secondary school? Where? Let me stop here.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Let's take the next set of questions. So I have Olufunsho Fafunwa Ayokunle Fagbemi Tunde Apolegun. I will take those three or maybe four, add Christy. Then I'll come to Auntie Adenike Grinch and others. So yeah, go ahead and ask your question, Olufunsho. Please, let's be brief so that we can throw in more interaction.
First of all, sir, I think the general has spoken a lot about followership. I just want to underscore the fact that at least in Africa and Nigeria in particular, the so-called followership has been pauperized and it's illiterate. In fact, in the last 8 years, you can say that poverty was weaponized. So when people are poor and illiterate, they are not stakeholders anymore. They've been marginalized. The whole process has been hijacked. That's it. So that's something I want you to remember, sir. Then the diarchy, I remember that Zeke spoke about it. I was alive and well at the time. But that concept in itself, soldiers are not angels. And that's why when they come in, things do not get any better. And finally, the last point I want to make, sir, is that governance and the lack of progress in the entire continent of Africa is related to what we've adopted, this so quote unquote democracy. Voting is not democracy. And we have not in any way looked into context of historical, cultural background to adapt it. I'm not sanguine about the future because unless we have something like a sovereign national conference where we decide about the best way forward, we will never, this system we are operating, whether presidential or parliamentary, is empowers just a few. And that is my concern. In Yoruba culture, we used to have governance by consensus. Even though there are kings, they have a governing council. And then, so people, you get the idea input from even ordinary people until we do something like that, as China did not allow itself to be bulldozed into concept of democracy. It did what is best for it, and it is where it is today. So unless we do something like that in Africa, and I'm not too optimistic about that, and really look at a cultural, historical background and adapt this concept of democracy to suit us, I don't think we're going to get anywhere. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, let's get Ayokunle.
General, good evening. Thank you very much for your presentation. It is clear that we belong to the same school of thought that says we need to develop our own indigenous governance system by reviewing issues clearly and objectively in a manner that will allow us to harness the interest of all stakeholders. So it's not just about diarchy in terms of the military. We still have the roles that the cultural and traditional leaders and rulers are expected to play with those in the religious parlance. And I want to thank you for bringing this to the table. Specifically on Niger, I was hoping that you will help us to again discuss the Sahelo-Saharan conflict system, particularly as it relates to the notion and dynamics of neo-eugenics and neo-Islam, particularly in terms of the intra-Islamic contestations, which played out in terms of the attitudinal disposition of the incumbent military regime in Niger to the official emissaries led by General Abdulsalam Abubakar, accompanied by His Eminence Sultan of Sokoto, Sahad Abubakar. But audience was given to the 14th Emir of Kano, who incidentally is a Khalifa of Tijani, sect of the Islam. I am hoping that you throw a little bit more light so that it can help us to understand the nature, character of Islamic contestations and the terror networking and their implications for the West African region. I thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll take one more. General, I hope there are not too many.
No, it's okay.
Okay, we'll take one more. I think we have Tunde Apelagu.
Thank you, Mr. Sonny Enebi.
Yes, sir.
I heard the general said that Nigeria is, I heard the general when he was speaking, he said Nigeria is being used by France as a proxy. I don't really think so, because there's no evidence that Tinubu is acting for France. And we shouldn't be making statements that we cannot collaborate with evidences. That's number one. And I believe that the nature of our people in Nigeria doesn't embrace integrity properly. Because no matter how bad the system that we use in Nigeria, whether presidential or parliamentarian system of government, if the people operating it are very honest, with high integrity, including accountability and submitting to argument and allowing themselves to be criticized without taking those who criticize them as enemies, I think Nigeria will be better. Thank you.
Thank you. Pastor Sonny. Oh, okay. Sir, do you want to address those three questions? Good evening, sir.
Yes.
Thank you so much for doing this. Maybe you can take those and then we'll take the next set.
Yes. Okay, but the one,
General, please, there's
Yes.
one thing I want to say again. We need to assume that those were the Boko Haram people, when they come to Nigeria in the north to perform their terrorist operations, wherever they run to is very close to Niger. So people who plan the coup in Niger might be the terrorists that we need to deal with. So we shouldn't be blaming those who, the ECOWAS, who are coming together to deal with the terrorists, because like you said, there shouldn't be a military government. Thank you.
Yeah, let me start with that. The statement you have made is not true. I wish I have a way to pass on your statement to the military government in Niger so that they can sue you. Because I'm telling you, they are suffering in Niger. They are really suffering in Niger. Just like the people in Lake Chad too are suffering. Okay, so that statement, I doubt it, what I read true. Now, again, about this project of no proxy. So the whole world, when France came up and they were insisting that let ECOWAS use force, and they were ready to back up ECOWAS. Okay, and got Senegal to say yes. If you go in, if Nigeria goes in, which will come? Senegal, how will Senegal come? They have to fly about 2.5 hours from Dakar or from their bases to come and join Nigerian troops. It's about 7 hours from Sokoto to Niamey. 7 hours. At a particular time, young people join the army to be mounting roadblocks from the border up to Niamey, stopping every damn vehicle and so on. So, to me, why should France be insisting? Why? It was because the statement made by our president encouraged France to say, yes, it is true. Let's invade Niger. And once you make that sort of statement, you sound like a proxy. Now you are backed up after the visit of Sanusi. We bring you to the point about this Islamic something. See, there's one thing that we need to appreciate about Islamic world, and that's what they call Umar, the Umar Brotherhood. In the real Umar of the Islamic world, there's no territory as such. It's a global Umar. And which means that if a brother Muslim approaches another brother Muslim, they must find a way to reconcile. Now, what is important is this, is that the Emir of Kano, like you said, is a caliph. It depends on the sect that Tiani, the Tiani in here belongs to. So if it's the same sect with Sanusi, who is the caliph, he has no alternative but to listen to him as a Muslim. The second thing is this, is that I don't think Tiani is an outside type. It must either be Kanuri or one other type. Because the person who took Sanusi to the military head of state, the Emir of Dangara, okay, is a Kanuri, sort of. All right, so Tiani may be a Kanuri person. And these Kanuri people are the ones who are manning Boko Haram and Coup. So you then need to ask yourself, we need to ask ourselves a question. If Boko Haram are mainly Kanuris, I've asked some of the traditional rulers I've come across, how come that you cannot solve the problem of Boko Haram if they are mostly Kanuris? What is the issue? Why are they not listening to you anymore? Why are you so helpless? And you are both a spiritual and traditional ruler. Okay, so at least to a certain extent now, Sansi Lamido Sanusi being a caliph, and they respect the caliph, has succeeded in doing what the others could not do. But you must remember one thing too. And this was one thing that one has been telling ECOWAS. It's not every time that you send a delegation that you have to make an announcement. Who cares? Find a way to solve the problem. After you have solved the problem, publicize it. But before then, quiet diplomacy. And that was what Sanusi did. And that's what he should have done right from the word go, instead of threatening, because that's what France and Co wanted. So that's why I'm saying that it's a proxy. And like the madam too said, same story. And it's obvious to anybody in Africa. African leaders want to look good before the Western world, before their own people, compared to their own people. They want to look very good. That's all. Now, about the system of government or governance, like China. No, China is not the. If you look at the Nordic countries, for example, Sweden, Finland, and so on, it's a dream world. If you've been to, at least I've been to Norway and Sweden. And I met Nigerians here who told me that, no, this is a dream world. If you're familiar with their system, they run parliamentary system in all these countries. But it's a dream world. And one of the countries, Finland, is where EPA is, who is telling people to sit at home and not go to work on Mondays in Finland. And the Finnish government said, free speech. Okay, we have no evidence that is causing, violence in Nigeria and so on. So they still allow him to stay there. So it's not only China, and I can tell you one thing, sir, from the experience of Russia or Soviet Union, China is going to implode one day, except China changes and create and establish a system like Switzerland, which is what non-Chinese people in China are asking for. That's what they're asking for. In fact, in the case of Nigeria, if we adopt a confederal system all these national conference and things like that will go away. Once you have a confederal system in Nigeria, it will go away because most of the things that needed to be done will be done by the state, not the federal government. Federal government will just restrict itself to two or three items, and that's all. That's why in Switzerland, nobody knows the president of Switzerland. Nobody. If I ask you what's the name of the president of Switzerland, you don't know, or any minister in Switzerland. You don't know them because the power belongs to the people in the canton. And if the federal government is going to pass anything that concerns everybody, that's a referendum. So there are systems of government, that we can adapt without holding any national conference. El-Rufai made a report. What has happened to the report by El-Rufai for APC? What happened to the report? In which El-Rufai went as far as resource control, which everybody is scared of. He went there. Our president has never spoken about El-Rufai report or about the issue of devolution of powers for a true federalism. He has not made a single word about that because he doesn't want it to happen. And our governors too do not want it to happen. Because what people do not realize is that Nigeria concentrates on the federal government. They forgot their own state, they forgot their own local government. So state governors and local government chairmen, they can steal as much as they want. Even our media, they don't even talk about that level of government. They only talk about that level of government. And there's no governor who will tell you that he has left that position and he's not a multimillionaire. See the pension we are getting in the poor society. Like you said, we're poor. But see the pension that the governors are getting. Having a house in Abuja, having a house in Lagos, getting so many 100,000 every month, free car, oh, no. That is why followership in a country where there's serious followership, that sort of thing never happen. That sort of thing never happen. In some countries, parliamentarians don't get paid. They get allowances when they meet. Akpabio said he's giving people token. That token is 2 million naira, and it's token. Akpabio. The first thing they did was to collect 75 billion to buy cars and everything for themselves. No, it is weak followership. It is weak followership that's allowing all these things to happen. That's all, not national conference or anything like that. We know what to do. Even the president himself knows what to do. Buhari knew what to do. He deliberately did not want to do it. And the way we are going, Bola Tinubu may not do it.
Thank you, sir. We can take the next set of questions now, sir. And so we'll go ahead with Professor Grange. And then Fola, we have 7 hands up. We'll take those. Those are all the hands we'll be taking today, and then some questions from the chat. So go ahead, Ma, with your question.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Pastor, and thank you, General. My question, actually, there is one question and a comment. Let me start with a comment. There is actually nowhere in the world where you have democracy running smoothly, not in the developed or in the developing world. But it's worse in our own situation because at the grassroots level, the mode of governance of various communities is that of autocracy. Look at all the tribes, ethnic groups, etc. You find that their leaders, even in the villages, are mostly men. Occasionally, an accident happens and a woman is put as the head. But that woman has to be very, very tough and to survive. And most times, she actually does not survive, except in history. So, why is it important to look at this? It's because that is where we have evolved from. And that's why we are finding it very difficult to develop a democracy. In the developed world, it's taking them years to get to where they are now. And even now, they're still having problems. But their followership has become so motivated, activated, and educated that they are now claiming their rights. That's where we want to get to in Nigeria. But we cannot get there if we continue to have inequity in governance, inequity in the communities, inequity in governance. The Senate, Congress, etc., they're all ruled by men. The president is a man from, I don't know, I mean, various, they actually do have some form of looking at ethnicity and demographics, etc., but they have not yet come to looking at gender. And I think that is something that needs to be looked at. So any government, either presidential or what is the other one? Any one of them that can give us better representation will be the one that we should be aiming at or aiming for. And you can see that the Nordic countries have actually arrived at this. Women have become their presidents, and they've had to be equally accountable, you know, so they are becoming sort of gender blind and ethnicity blind and whatever. And that's where we want to get to.
Okay.
Having said that, my specific question is this concerning this Nigerian situation. Does ECOWAS have a constitution that actually prescribes what to do in the case of a coup occurs in any of their countries? Or does the constitution actually help them to prevent coups? This is something that needs to be looked at again. And we are so used to, you know, okay, just developing constitutions without due reference to history, you know, demographic problems, etc. That once the constitution is even developed, we set it aside and we don't even look at it again. So, General, please, can you address that issue of the constitution of ECOWAS? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much, ma'am. And we are going to ask Fola, plant engineer from Canada, and Mr. Charles Odion Iyore to ask their questions. Because we are coming up on time, please keep your comments and question very brief. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Fola.
Thank you for the very important Zoom gathering today. I appreciate the speech of the general, and I've learned a lot. I'm so sorry it's noisy here. I'm going to change my position.
We can hear you.
So that is helpful, very helpful to the inside politics of Niger. The question I have is with respect to the gruesome French neocolonialism, whereby, according to Dr. Arikana, I think she's from Zambia or Zimbabwe, who analyzed the struggle they're having to shed the neocolonial power of France over their currency, over their central bank, over uranium, and so on. So if what she said is true, and that can be verified, I think they need help. And it's only the military that can shake off the hands of France. My only fear is that that framework may not exist, whereby they will be supported, their currency will be supported. The ECO, the West African currency, was to be introduced about 5 years ago by the economic community that has made a lot of strides. But it was the French countries that prevented the introduction of that currency because France was having a stranglehold on their central bank. So they need sympathy, they need help. So I wish ECOWAS could understand that. The question of being proxy to France is wrong. And we should be careful when we are making comments. There is a protocol, there is a constitution of ECOWAS. There is a protocol. When there is a coup, you must condemn it, you must sanction them, and you must make them aware that force could be used. There are a series of protocols that are in place already. So whether it is the president of Benin Republic that is the head of ECOWAS, he will follow those steps. But we all know that all conflicts and wars end up on the round table. That is why I'm in favor of pressure and coupled with diplomatic moves that will help them to resolve the problem. Thank you.
So thank you, sir. So there was no question, really, just a comment, correct? Okay. So would have Charles Yore, please go ahead with your question.
Okay. Thank you very much, the General. I think it's a very thought-provoking presentation. But I'd like to look at the bottom of it all, to what Remi Shugbetu said earlier on, that all of this really is an idea to get arbitrage on commodities and keep people perennially poor, where others are on the other side. Politics in itself is about producing shared prosperity. If there is no shared prosperity, the basis of politics ceases to exist. That is where I disagree with the General on the fact that it's policy followership is a thought. Because politics in itself, or governance in itself, is the aggregation of individual rights into a representative and responsible bureaucracy, be it a monarchy, be it anything at all. So it is not the followership, because if followership lets that happen, then they have not failed. Now, I'd like to tell you that Mr. Remi Shugbetu and I began this war about 1988 to say that the currency auction that was taking place was going to destroy the economy, and we said it'd be 1,000 naira to the naira to the dollar then. It didn't agree. Now, I'll give you a history of how our prosperity was destroyed. The first one was the Udoji Award, which was done not related to productivity at all. The second was indigenization, where you're not prepared for industrial production. The third was a deregulation without a linkage to productivity or production linkages. The fourth was a currency sale in order to meet what is called the special drawing rights, which had absolutely no clue as to what was going on. We fought at that time with Remi Shugbetu as my chairman, and most people did not listen to what we're saying. So the key issues for the elite in Nigeria to reach, enlighten themselves again, just like we're trying to do, to understand that the whole purpose of politics is a shared prosperity. Why is Ukraine fighting? Ukraine is fighting to share the prosperity of Western Europe. We have destroyed our prosperity, so there's nothing to share in West Africa. And no matter how much noise we make, we might be this perennial state of poverty, or we must stop blaming the followership. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we are going to take Mr. Stephen Lawson, and then so you can address, because I believe there's just been one question from everyone so far. So we would have Mr. Stephen Lawson. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Auntie Jumi. General, your presentation was very insightful. As a matter of fact, for a lot of us, it is more of an historical tutorial that we are very glad to be abreast with. And I agree with you, even though it might seem to be a little bit in the opposite with some of the submission here, that a majority of our issues actually lies with the followership. The followership itself is the crop from which the leadership obviously comes from, even though we know that the buck stops at the table of the leader. So perhaps you would like to share with us some insights, some ideas, recommendations for us to be able to gain and engage the followership within a time frame period, not in the immediacy, so that in the next 5 years or 10 years, the followership might be very much empowered to be able to determine the output of our political lives. And so if we understand that, perhaps we will be able to produce leaders that are going to be responsible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, my brother, for that powerful submission. So go ahead, sir. If you could address those 4 comments, and then we'll take the last set, and then I'll read some questions to you from the chat, sir.
Okay, just let me take the last one. I've just promised to send a concept paper that I developed on the issue of followership to set up a laboratory for the study of followership in Nigeria and how they can be empowered. I did try your universities in various parts of Nigeria. They were not interested anyway, for one reason or the other. But church or any institution can set up that sort of lab. It's very simple. Now, so I will send the concept paper, which can be shared to everybody. Let me start with ECOWAS. ECOWAS has a charter, which was agreed to by every member of ECOWAS, including Mauritania. Mauritania has now left and joined the northern Arab countries. But ECOWAS has a charter. Apart from that, ECOWAS has a protocol or convention for peace and security in West Africa. And they have a whole commissioner for political affairs, peace and security in the ECOWAS secretariat there, who is in charge with some principal program officers and so on to implement this convention agreed to by all members. Now, there's also a convention of governance system in West Africa, governance system and democracy in West Africa, put together by ECOWAS, agreed to by all member states of ECOWAS, and signed by the heads of state of ECOWAS. And it is within this convention that they have a playbook, like I said, which they use in responding to a situation like the coup. But what I'm trying to say is this. Over the last 2.5 years, we have seen 3 coups before the Niger war. And they use that playbook, and it's not working. As I'm saying, it's not working. Therefore, it requires that you need to look at that playbook again. And not only looking at it, but also have a flexible playbook in which you don't have to respond the same way that you responded in the past, because situations have changed. And the boys who are doing coups now, they know the playbook so well. And Mali did show the helplessness of ECOWAS, because each member state is sovereign. So there's a limit to what ECOWAS can do. ECOWAS is not a political federation or political confederation. It's not. The president of ECOWAS cannot tell a member state to do something they don't want to do. Any member state to do what it does not want to do. Can tell ECOWAS to go to hell, or it can even pull out. And Mali and Co. did threaten to pull out. Okay, so there's a limit to power and to anything that anybody in ECOWAS can do. There's a limit. And that's why I said ECOWAS is as strong as the member states of ECOWAS. And their willingness to do what is necessary. That's the way it is. So they have all the documents that are necessary. They have them. They have them. But you have to be flexible in applying those playbooks to go in line with the situation that you are faced with. And ECOWAS has lost face with Mali, with Guinea. So coming up to threaten, it does not make any sense at all. Or you couldn't do that in Mali and Burkina Faso. It means you have not learned any lesson at all, any lessons at all. And the advisors to our president too, they have a fault. They did not even think properly before they just started, before they push papers to him to start saying what he said. Today now, he has toned down completely. And to my brother in Canada, when you have a situation in Africa, and you know that African military can really act to solve problems within their own territory. They have to depend on outside. And then you just come up and say, I'm going to invade another country because I want to restore democracy there. And then one foreign country then comes up and say, if you do that, I will support you. And what are the people fighting for? You have just said too that you support Francophone countries because they want to get rid of neo-colonialist activities of France, especially in West Africa. And then for our president to say, we invade, and they come up and say, yes, we support you. No. And France, up to now, I've told Niger that they are not going anywhere. They're not going anywhere. France has told Niger that. But France is looking for a cover. And Nigeria should not provide France the cover. Because the same France never did anything in Chad. They did not do anything in Chad. They allowed Debby's son to take over the government. Now, when you come to ECHO, no, sir, it is not the Francophone country that was not ready for ECHO. It was Nigeria. Nigeria was not ready for ECHO. Nigeria was not ready for ECHO. Francophone countries were ready for ECHO. In fact, they even agreed to change the CFR to ECHO. Ghana agreed to join the Francophone countries. Nigeria convinced Ghana and said, step back. So it's not the Francophone countries at all. Secondly, too, the arrangement of the CFR has changed completely between Cote d'Ivoire and France. All this information are open. They're available. They're available. So the sort of situation where Francophone countries in West Africa were tied to the airport strings of France have gone completely. It has changed. It has changed over the last 2 years. It has changed. The information is open. So if anybody tells you that, now coming to mining, about 10 years ago, ECA set up a mining center to advise African countries on how to negotiate contracts with all these foreign companies who are coming to Africa to do some mining. Okay. African Union has taken over this center now. That center now is now based in Conakry, in Guinea. And African countries have been using the experts in that center to negotiate. If you look at the new contracts, mining contracts in Africa today, they're totally different from the one you find about 5-10 years ago. 5-10 years ago, they change, big change. You know, big change altogether. So that's the point. And then there's one thing that people need to understand. In the case of uranium, France exports only 12% of the needs of uranium from Niger. 12%. Burkina Faso that's making noise has no uranium at all. They have nothing like uranium. Niger, yes, 12% for France. And France has a 3-year reserve of uranium stock. Namibia is ready to supply them. Namibia ready to supply them. So we need to be very clear about some of these issues, before accusing France or anything. But the point I'm also making is this, is that if we are not so weak, why do we need them? After 60 years of independence, there's something wrong with us. There's something surely that is wrong with us. So I think I have been able to, answer some of the questions, some of the issues that have been raised.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. So we are going to take the last 3 sets of questions from Jose Omotosho and Colonel Bello Fadile, and then the last person is Benjamin Umieza. So please go ahead, Mr. Omotosho, with your question.
Thank you so much. My name is Dr. Joseph Omotosho. I'm a retired Wing Commander in Nigerian Air Force. And I want to thank you, Pastor Ichua, for what you are doing. I pray that somehow, someday, we will look back and thank you and everyone that is making the contribution. General Williams, sir, I always salute, sir. But my question, my contribution first is around the Sovereign National Conference to determine how to be governed. The problem is not the system of governance. The problem is not the military. The problem is not whether we have a civilian rule or not. I think the problem is righteousness, tied it up with justice. Professor also mentioned whether women should come on the scene. I think the problem is basically righteousness. How righteous are we when we get to the place of leadership? Let me quote the Bible, which says, righteousness exalts a nation. And if the righteous bear rule, people will rejoice. Nigerians are mourning. So that means things are bad. Nobody is considering them. How do we solve this problem? Well, is it followership or leadership? I think it's more with the leadership. I remember the days of war against indiscipline, and everybody was in shape. Everybody was queuing up. Everybody was picking pieces of paper on the road. So if it is a leader who is aggressive, wants to do what is right, and is backed by the judiciary that want to do something. For example, I know the judiciary is very, very compromised in Nigeria. It used to be the last hope of the common man, but it's not anymore. So my take is this. I think the Sovereign National Conference is very, very important. And I believe in confederacy because, Nigeria is just, it's a country, but it's not a nation. Nigeria is not a nation. Nations are bounded by culture, by language, by, common knowledge and things that bind them together. Nigeria is just a conglomeration of nations put together by Britain for business purposes. I think it's high time we come back to that. The decree 1999 that we're operating on is a military decree. It's decree 4. It's not we the people coming together. So let people go along their cultural ways and let the regions develop and go back to where we were before. And there are 3 basic nations in Nigeria, and come up with the cultural language. That's what I will advocate. Now to the question, sir. Do you still believe in an entity called Nigeria? And do you think Nigeria can survive another 10 years? Those are my 2 questions. Based on what we have been discussing, do you really have hope and believe in this country, the way things are going on? And do you think Nigeria can survive for another 10 years?
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So Colonel Bello Fadile, please go ahead with your question, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Like you always said, hurry the boss trouser. I think you can confirm, or as you are aware, that before I ask my questions on the ECOWAS standby force and then 21 member of the Niger government. You are aware, sir, that without the support of the Nigerian special forces and the Chadian military, Nigeria couldn't have conducted the 2015 election, where we were able to clear Boko Haram from the 15 local governments. Even though Buhari government claimed they did, Jonathan government did. So Boko Haram is not Nigeria problem. And some minutes ago, the ECOWAS extraordinary minute came to a decision that the ECOWAS standby committee should get their forces ready immediately to restore order in Niger Republic, constitutional order in Niger Republic. Now the military junta, knowing that nothing has warrant or under the UN Constitution or the use of force, there's no breakdown of law order in Niger, have constituted a government of their own people. Where does ECOWAS standby force and the joint task force and the Nigerian government? Because the president is saying the problem in Niger is we have a destabilizing effect on Nigeria, forgetting where we are coming from. Where do we stand? Now you have ECOWAS standby force, you have the Nigerian force, you have the Nigerian force, you have the joint task force. Where do we stand to maintain international peace and order under the UN Constitution? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. So we'll take the last question and then, sir, you could address all this. Please go ahead, Mr. Benjamin, ask your question.
Okay, good evening, General. Just two quick questions. Firstly, I want to know why we tend to gravitate towards democracy as the sole problem to challenges facing African leadership or general global leadership. We've seen democracy fail in many instances, and there are countries that are not practicing democracy and they are doing very well. So why is it that we don't tend to actually maybe okay, before the coming of the West to Africa, we had systems of governance. We had traditional systems of governance that actually worked. Their systems that were prosperous systems. We have them in history, great civilizations. So why don't we kind of maybe model our own system of leadership into what was previously existing before these guys came to introduce democracy as the silver bullet to all leadership challenges? Like we see Saudi Arabia, they don't practice democracy. We see UAE, they're not practicing democracy. Libya were doing very well under Gaddafi, apart from until when the West started their own trouble. So why don't we actually come back, step aside, and maybe look inwards at systems of governance that actually worked for us as Africans, uniquely African systems of governance, and actually practice those systems. Like we see in Rwanda that we're talking about, that's making Rwanda is doing well today. Rwanda is not a democracy, except we want to deceive ourselves that that's a democracy. It's not a democracy, and they are doing very, very well there. Why can't we come back and look inwards at systems of governance and teach this, maybe this democracy, we can keep it aside or model it to what fits us? Then secondly, I was reading something this morning and they're trying to tie the interference of the West. Okay, then trying to tie the interference of the West due to the Russian-Ukraine war and the gas pipeline that's traveling from Nigeria to Europe. Is that just another controversial theory, or it actually has a linkage to this? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir, with those last three sets of questions, and if you could also give us your closing remark. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay. About Sovereign National Conference. In my own humble opinion, we do not need it. Because to me, since we are a multi-ethnic nation, I believe there's a system of governance that can keep us together. I've just mentioned the Swiss system, Switzerland, based on the German, French, They have one other language nobody understands in the world, and Italian. Those are the cantons in Switzerland. And that's what I'm saying. You don't even know the president of Switzerland or the council of ministers. So there's a system. Then you ask me, is there anyone in Africa? Yes. Tanzania has the former Zanzibar. Many people do not know that Zanzibar is still there. And Tanzania is a confederation. What is the arrangement? Zanzibar has a president, not vice president, a president. And in the Tanzania constitution, Zanzibar also produces the vice president for the whole of Tanzania. And now recently, the president from the majority Tanzania died. The lady from Tanzania, who was the vice president, is now the president. But Zanzibar still has a president. That is the sort of confederal system that can be done in Nigeria. And like I said, El-Rufai report went into that. So what is the need of a national conference when you could usually adopt that? To me, there's no need at all. There's no need at all. Look at El-Rufai's report, do the confederal system, and then everything will be all right. Now, what may happen is this is that you cannot blame the federal government if you are not developing. You don't need to force the state to be part of any zone. Let the state form part of the confederal body. If states decide that they want to form a zone, that is their problem. If you look at Southwest now, in business and industry, although a group of companies is doing a fantastic job now in the Southwest, other states in other zones can do the same thing. So there are examples all over the place that we can use instead of all the national. I remember when they did one under Jonathan, each person in the national conference got 12 million naira. 12 million naira each person. And what did they do with the report? The same thing with the Obasanjo one. We don't need it. We don't need it. That's my own humble opinion. Now, about Bello Fadile and his joint task force and all those things, and so on and so forth. Again, those ones cannot exist without the support. You'll be surprised to note that France helps with intelligence for those units. France, they come all the way from France to come and be gathering information for our own people in that area to use. This is why I'm saying that we need to sit down really, seriously, except the military, to sit down and say, hey, this has to stop. We need to take responsibility for ourselves and find out the way out. Interestingly, the president went to Armed Forces Staff College in Niger and read out a speech. No president in Nigeria has ever read that speech. What did he say? That the Armed Forces needs to look at its organization, its operation, strategy, and tactics. No president has ever said that, even in the military president. Now, he has made that speech. What is he doing about it? What is he doing about it? Is he getting the military boss to act? Because he has accepted there's a need to reorganize the military itself. That's the problem about Africa, you know. President will go and talk. If in a developed world, a president goes out to make that sort of statement, things are going to change. Because those are policy statements and they must change. Okay, so it depends on who is going to make the Minister of Defense and the Minister of International Security in Nigeria, which is for something ministers that he has appointed. So about the Tambai Brigade, Where will the money to run the standby force come from? They've asked each country to designate a battalion to be used. But anytime you ask African countries to do something, the next question is who's going to pay for it? Who is going to pay for it? And the joint task force, in most cases, Nigeria was bearing the brunt. Nigeria was bearing the brunt. Okay, and of course, France, UK, United States. Always, if we don't sit down, like I said, to look at all these issues, we are not going to get anywhere. So to me, the joint task force, the Tabai Brigade, because if you have Tabai Brigade active, what do you need a joint task force for? You don't need it. Tabai Brigade should have taken the responsibility to be able to do that. If you go far away from Nigeria and you go to Sudan, two stupid generals are fighting each other. And all Africans are looking at them. It's Saudi Arabia and United States that are trying to help to solve the problem. You see how weak we are? As if we have no strategic thinkers in Africa. It is a very sad story. I feel very sad in my knowledge that we have descended to that level. So I believe that with respect to Niger, what should happen is this is that Pastor Chua said, give them time. Now that everybody has accepted that you can't send an invading force to Niger, what you should try to get them to do is to be an example to Mali, Guinea, and Burkina Faso. And tell them that your predecessor stayed there for only 1 month in 2010, 2011, one year. And they handed over government. And none of them contested any election. So can you live up to that standard? In order for you to be an example to Mali, because Mali has already put in their constitution, we are waiting for a referendum to approve. And in that constitution, the soldiers can contest. But in the case of Niger, in 2011, no, the soldiers stopped themselves from contesting in the new constitution. And with also too, there's also always a playbook that whenever there's a transition, you must write a new constitution. They don't need to write a new constitution. They don't need to write a new constitution, not at all. There's nothing bad with the present one. Nothing at all that's bad with the present one. So what they need to do is to convince the military boys there and say, okay, stay there for 1 year. All of you, amnesty, get your pension and everything, and just stay quietly. Because those who did the coup in 2010, they are all staying in Niger. They're there. They're there, including Janjibo, who was the former head of state, military head of state, a gentleman to the core, that man. Okay, so this, what I can say, because the outcome of the meeting in Abuja is are now accepted that they must go through quiet diplomacy to get what they want. And let them discuss and be able to do that. But the president of Guinea-Bissau, who was the former president of chairman of ECOWAS before Bola Tinubu, that one is pushing because he has a problem in his country. That's a problem. And Nigerian troops are in Guinea-Bissau to prevent a coup. If not, he could have gone a long time ago, even though he was a former general too. But Nigerian troops are there. Troops are still there in Gambia. So the issue is this, is that when you go to any country, you know when you go in, you don't know when you are going to get out. You don't know when you are going to get out. That is why in DRC, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, UN has been there for over 60 years, and there's no way out. With all the violence that's going on in DRC, with all the violence that's going on in DRC, there's no way out. And Nigerian too, coming back to Niger, they cannot solve the problem of the jihadists without help. Mali told everybody to go. They brought in Wagner. They've not solved the problem. Burkina Faso, half of Burkina Faso have been occupied by the jihadists. I will repeat, we need to sit down as Africans and say, hey, what do we do without these people? And then even if you are going to ask them for help, we will now decide that we must take some responsibility for ourselves and decide very clearly what sort of help we need from them and over what period of time. I will end on that. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you so much. Pastor Sonny, you're
Yeah, thank you very much, General. We are very grateful for your very insightful and comments on the issues at ground. On the issue on ground, at least we know that you have a lot of experience, information that you have brought to bear. And we want to thank everyone that came on the platform this evening. I hope we are better enlightened. And in general, we really appreciate the fact that you are going to send us your position paper. And we'll probably, we know at your age, you're probably not, but we'll try to work with you to see how to work with whatever paper you send to us. We promise to look at it because this is what we are all about in ALG. We want to thank everyone that have come on the platform today. My name is Sonny Elubi, co-host for this program. And on behalf of Pastor Ichwa, I want to say have a very good evening. Hand over to Jumoke. Maybe we'll have one or two announcements before we leave the platform. Thank you.
okay. Thank you, sir. And I also want to thank Major General for taking the time to really walk us through the history and a lot of information that some of us may not have been privy to. And there are a couple of takeaways that I just want us to emphasize on here at ALG, which is the followership. And he talked about the African problem is not leadership, but followership. And that's part of what we're trying to do here, really build a set of engaged citizens that have the information that they need to actively engage in nation building. And we launched the CRC course on August 1st. And it has 6 modules. Interesting enough, I did post a couple of slides from module 1. We talked about citizens' responsibility. So we encourage everyone to continue to be engaged in this conversation. That's part of what we're doing here every Thursday at 5 p.m. West African time. We meet, we bring thought leaders to speak on issue, and then we're better informed for us to be able to hold our leaders accountable and also to elect the right leaders for our nations, for the progress and advancement of our nation. So thank you so much. We posted a link. If this is your first time here, we're glad you were able to join us. Please go ahead and complete that form that we put in the group, in the chat room, where we'll be able to get your information and then send you more information on what we're doing here at Africa Leadership Group. Thank you. Back to you, Pastor Sonny. I think that's it. So thank you, everyone. Appreciate you. Thank you very much, Major General. We appreciate your time with us.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Can I say good evening to the General, Mrs. Adetola? General Williams, I think he has gone.
I think he may have dropped off. Yes, he did spend quite a number of time with us. Yes.
We used to work together.
He's still on. Major General is still on.
Is he this there?
He's still
General,
here.
this is Mrs. Adetola saying hello to you. You can't see my face. Anyway, good night.
Thank you everyone for joining us. Bye. Same time, same Zoom link next week. Please share the information. The more informed we are, the more engaged we can be to really effect the changes that we need. Thank you. Have a good night. God bless you.
God bless you too.